This is going to be episode 1 of the new BioLore podcast, and we are tackling a massive subject, which is going to be the history of the Elvhen people in the Dragon Age world. By the way, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't completed all the DLCs for Dragon Age, Inquisition, etc. Now, we're going to start off, of course, with Prevail history, where Elven people is mostly centered around the Elvhen Pantheon, also known as the Evanuris for anyone who has played Trespasser knows. So, what is the origin story of these gods per Dalish lore? Firstly, it's important to note that Dragon Age era Dalish do not know the full story or the bigger picture of what happened before the fall of Arlathan and the creation of the Veil, which I don't think it's commonly known that the two coincide very much. We must think of the creation of the Veil as an event not dissimilar to that of the Dark Ages for us in the real world, meaning that there was a break in the chain of knowledge of history, and this loss of that knowledge and that context greatly shapes and affects how the latter era's perception of the former era is. We're really just seeing through everything through a skewed lens rather than impartially. So some of the facts that the Dalish know may not be accurate, and I don't think we'll know the full story for a while. I don't think we're going to get the full story in Dragon Age 4 either. It would be cool, however, to see either a game of the Prevail Evanuris and or a television series, which I've been working on and kind of set aside for now, a Dragon Age TV series.
Patrick Wakes, please. I'd like to speak with you or anyone that can help me out in this matter.
But all that aside, it would be interesting to kind of see a pre-Dragon Age, a pre-Veil story, game, whatever come out to kind of give us a bigger context, as I have a feeling it's going to be filled with drama and court intrigue, which is, of course, something that we all love to see. Now then, we must also keep in mind that we also have no other reliable source of information, unfortunately, as a counterpoint to the Dalish story when it comes to this era, especially since we know that the Chantry has a tendency to suppress and or destroy anything related to Elven history. We see a little bit of this in Dragon Age Inquisition and the Emerald Graves quest, and we can either willfully participate in the continuation of the destruction of that history or participate in it being preserved by either giving the scrolls to the Chantry or to the Dalish anyway that we encounter in the game. Secondly, it's interesting to note that from what we hear from the Dalish, there is no particular myth or legend or story about how the universe was created. So keeping these points in mind, we now move forward to the birth of the Elven gods. So the first of the Elven gods to be born, according to Dalish legend, was Elganarion, son of the sun and land. Again, this is very similar to ancient Greek pantheon, whereby there was Uranus and I forget her name. Hang on. Uranus and Rhea first had Zeus, and then all these other children. I might be mixing my generations here, but anyway. In any case, Elganon was born first, then Mythal, who of course became his wife. And Mythal was very much seen as the peacemaker of the Elven Pantheon. Now, kind of the reason for Mythal's creation was that classic ancient mythology tropes. Elganon had to, or felt the need to kill his father to become the king of the universe, of course. And when Mythal was born and Elganon met her and fell in love with her, he brought back his father and all these things, or his father being the sun, and then that's how more or less the world came to be. So here's a quick rundown of which god represents what in the Elvhen Pantheon. We have Mythal, the All-Mother and Great Protector, and when she is eventually betrayed by her fellow Evanuris, she becomes more associated with justice, and I think vengeance. Hang on. Could be seen as wrathful. Justice, judgment, wisdom. My apologies. So not dissimilar in this case to someone like Rhea or even Athena of Greek mythology. After that, we have Elganon, who is, the god of vengeance, so the firstborn, and Mythal's husband. And again, in Elganon, we do see similarities as the god of vengeance, a very vengeful, wrathful, and being god like Zeus. Then we have Falon Din, who is the guide and friend of the dead. Here we can kind of see him as a Hades type character. Following Falon Din is Dirthaman, the keeper of secrets. We also have Andril, the goddess of the hunt. So here we kind of see a Demeter type deity. By the way, if you hear that kind of sound in the background every now and again, it's because the water pipes in my building are ancient as well. At least by Canadian standards, and because it's not sufficiently warm outside, they creak and they do all these stupid shit, and it's been like this for months. Are you done? So Solas is the keeper of the hearth, the art, healing, and song. So there's a combination of multiple Greek deities here if you want to keep up with the comparison. So goddess of the hearth is more Hera. The arts, healing, and song is more Aphrodite and Apollo. Then we have June, the god of craft, which could be perceived as Hephaestus. And Ghilanine, the mother of the Hala, which I don't know that there's any particular counterpart in Greek mythology. But yeah, so that's just kind of a brief encapsulating view of the Elvhen Pantheon that we know. And of course, could not mention the Elvhen Pantheon without mentioning Fen'Harel, the trickster, who basically is Loki in this universe, because he is both friend to the Evanuris, but also friend to the Forgotten, who are the enemies of the Evanuris, which Loki was the son of Jotun, or Jotnar, in Viking Norse mythology, but was adopted by Odin, and therefore kind of had a foot with the Viking gods, but also a foot with the Jotnar as well. Again, they're mortal enemies. Now, before I move on to the creation of the Veil and post-Veil Elven history, I'm going to emit some hypotheses I have about the Elven Pantheon and other deities within the world of Thedas. So, my theory about the Elven Pantheon is that the Elven Pantheon is in fact the old gods that are referred to by the Tevinter Imperium as the ones who are the dormant gods that when one is found by the Darkspawn, it is awoken, activated, and causes another blight. I mean, I've seen in quick passing some people speculating similar things to what I have speculated. I've also seen speculation as to the opposite, or as a contradiction to what has been said. Like, for example, I saw one person saying the Elven Pantheon cannot be the old gods because the old gods are dragons and the Elven Pantheon are humanoid, which I say, yes, but we've seen that that Morgan can transform into a dragon. So it could very well be that the Evanuris of old were also capable of becoming dragons themselves. And the old gods are said to have been locked away in their celestial realm, which could very well be interpreted to be the Fade, which was created when the Veil was created, when Solas Fen'Harel created the Veil to lock away the remaining Evanuris who had all taken part in Mythal's assassination, which ultimately was not successful. Because we do meet her later, obviously. But that could very well be interpreted as the old gods being, as I said, locked away in their celestial realm. Now, of course, once they got placed into the Fade, they could have been corrupted by whatever extremely powerful spell, obviously, that Solas created to create the Veil. Could have potentially not only made them slumber, but made them transform into dragon-like beings, and in so doing, that created the taint, which is from their blood and all that, and the Darkspawn may ultimately be Elven slaves from that era, or originally were Elven slaves from that era that kind of got locked away with the Evanuris. A spell that massive that's only supposed to target like 6 or 7 people could potentially have had consequences and collateral damage that we're not necessarily aware of as of yet. And exploring the crossroads in the Trespasser DLC, you kind of see that there was potentially some of the Elven people that were left behind, the creation of the Veil, the shattering of Elvenon. This theory could also potentially explain Solas's strong feelings towards the Grey Wardens. If the Darkspawn are indeed corrupted and distorted elves that were slaves back in the day, and if the old gods are indeed, the Evanuris, whom were people that he knew and certainly worked close with for a while and coexisted with, seeing the Grey Wardens as essentially murderers of his own kind, corrupted as they are. Now, if we were to expand upon that further, there's also the fact that in their joining, the Grey Wardens do need to drink Darkspawn blood, and given that, love him or hate him, Solas is a bit of a purist when it comes to elven blood. It would make sense for him to kind of look down on people who are trying to, in a sense, if the Darkspawn are indeed corrupted elves, are trying to attain some form of elven status by drinking this blood. To me, it would make sense in that context. If my theory turns out to be true, that would certainly, as I said, explain why Solas hates the Grey Wardens so much. The big question is, if that is what I believe, that the Elvhen Pantheon is the same thing as the old gods, who is whom? So the first one up is going to be Elganon, who is the first of the Elvhen Pantheon according to Dalish lore, the god of vengeance, if you'll recall. I believe that his counterpart in the old gods, if they are indeed one and the same, would be Zazikel, who is the god of chaos among the old gods. If we go with Mythal, there is no counterpart to Mythal, of course, because Mythal was not part of the gods that were put away by the Veil. And again, another indicator that the old gods may indeed be the Evanuris is that there are 7 old gods and 7 Evanuris who were put away by Fen'Harel, even though the Elvhen Pantheon, of course, contains 9 figures. 6, 8, and then it's Fen'Harel, 9. So obviously Fen'Harel was not shut away with the creation of the Veil, and Mythal neither. They are the 2 sole Elven perceived deities that were not put away by the Veil, and therefore that's 7/7. It's a theory. We'll work on it. Now Andruil, the goddess of the hunt, our beloved Demeter deity, I had her down as Dumat. Really? I think by process of elimination at... Okay. Like, I wrote this down months ago in preparation for this, so, like I said, this could very well be just complete bull. Anyway. Okay, next up, June. the god of craft, whom I equivocated to Hephaestus. I found the counterpart to him in Thoth, the old god of fire. Next up, Falun Din, the friend of the dead, our Hades archetype. I equivocated to Andorol, the old god of slaves. Because, like it or not, most of those who died in ancient Arlothan, because, I mean, like it or not, the elves were purported to be immortal, so the only way that they would die would be through fighting, and the only ones who would really fight and die would be slaves. Right? Just, if that makes sense. Gilanan, so the mother of Hala, I equivocated to Uthermiel, the old god of beauty. Now then, Dirthaman, the keeper of secrets, I equivocated to Razikael, the old god of mystery. And Selais, the hearthkeeper, I equivocated to Usikan, the old god of night. In the comments below, let me know what you think, if I'm right on the money, wrong on the money. All positive and constructive criticism comments are welcome. So, those are my equivocations of Evanuris with the old gods. Now then, if we set that aside for a moment, we cannot forget about the Forgotten Ones, who are supposed to be the enemies of the Evanuris and therefore the Elvhen Pantheon. There's a few theories that I have about the Forgotten Ones. I think that they may be the Titans, because you have to keep in mind, when Solas created the veil to lock away the Evanuris, he also locked away the Forgotten Ones into the abyss. And it would also explain why the dwarves themselves have no connection with the Fate, instead of having solely connection with the stone, which we find out are Titans in the Descent DLC. And it would also make sense in the sense that the Titans were also forgotten by their own people for the most part. They also may be the Forbidden Ones. Okay. In my wanting to understand why I wrote that down in my notes, I decided to look up the Forbidden Ones on the wiki. So the Forbidden Ones are said to be a group of 4 unique and very powerful ancient demons that are said to be older than the Darkspawn and the Tevinter Imperium. And some scholars even believe they taught the magisters of old how to use blood magic. Now, if you'll recall from the Descent, lyrium is actually Titan blood. Yeah, it makes sense to me that, they taught the magisters how to use blood magic, because the blood of the Titans does hold the essence of magic. Lyrium holds an essence of magic. Dwarves are pretty much immune to it. And maybe the creation of blood magic is how lyrium, so Titan blood, could be used as kind of a resource to give magical powers to those who do not have it. And that's why they are the Forbidden Ones, because they were not supposed to teach blood magic to people who did not originally have magic. So the Forgotten Ones are a mysterious group of elven gods and are a maligned aspect of the ancient elven pantheon, the other half being the benevolent creators led by Mythal and Agenon. During the event, the Dalish elves referred to as the Great Betrayal, the dreadwolf Fen'Harel was said to have tricked both sets of gods, locking the Forgotten Ones away in the world in their realm of the Abyss, which, let's see what their definition is, also known as the Void. Undefined location mentioned mainly in connection with the various religious beliefs in Thetis. So, I mean, it could be that the Void is actually where the dwarves live. Aha! See? 3 lower levels in the Descent DLC, Forgotten Caverns, Bastion of the Pure, and the Wellspring are grouped at the expedition table as locations of the Uncharted Abyss. So, if the Forgotten Ones were sent to the Abyss by Fen'Harel, and the Abyss is in fact the bodies of the Titans, maybe, and shutting the creators away in their realm of the heavens, so that would be behind the veil, as we know. According to popular belief, not even the Dalish properly remember the Forgotten Ones since then, outside of their dreams. Forgotten Ones are a dark mirror presiding over the worst aspects of existence: disease, terror, spite, and malevolence. But you have to keep in mind that this is from the perception of the elves. They serve not as shepherds of the elves, but rather as figures of your... I mean, we're seeing the Forgotten Ones from the perspective of the elves, and therefore the, from what I can tell from here, the victors. So it's a little bit normal that they're being portrayed as, you know, these awful people. And I apologize if I mispronounce any of these terms. So, like, all of these different factors and how they're being described in lore canon and all that would lead me to believe that the Forgotten Ones and the Forbidden Ones are potentially the same kind, and that they're all actually titans who may have once been more or less the size of the Evanuris, but with their being banished to the abyss, not unlike the Evanuris, if they are indeed the old gods, when they were banished by Fen'Harel, they were mutated to their dragon form. The titans may very well have been mutated to these gigantic stone creatures, and their blood being delirium that can be mined, etc. So those are all my theories. So this episode has gone on a lot longer than I thought it would. This is going to be the end of the episode, so in the next episode we'll be seeing potentially the creation of the Veil, but certainly post-Veil Elven history. Alright, so my fellow Dragon Age and BioWare fans, Dareth, shiral, and I'll see you next time.